In 2026, Bolognese sauce is one of the most popular pasta sauces worldwide, but most jars aren't actually real Bolognese. Most people assume it's just tomato sauce with ground beef stirred in. Authentic Bolognese is the opposite. It is a slow-cooked, meat-driven ragu where tomato plays a supporting role, not the lead. We ranked 10 supermarket brands against that standard, 7 you should skip, and 3 that actually deliver. From sauces hiding 1% meat behind soy fillers to jars packing over 30% slow-simmered beef, this countdown covers it all. Starting with number 7. Number 7. Prego Bolognese sauce sets the baseline for what passes as Bolognese in most American supermarkets. On the surface, it promises Italian comfort in a jar, but a closer look at the label tells a different story. The ingredient list leads with tomato puree, followed by water, beef broth, and only a trace of actual meat. Independent tests estimate less than 5% by weight. Instead of a slow-cooked, meat-rich ragu, this sauce leans hard on tomatoes and sweeteners. Each serving contains about 4 grams of added sugar, giving it a sweetness more reminiscent of ketchup than a savory stew. To keep the texture thick and shelf-stable, Prego relies on xanthan gum and modified cornstarch, ingredients that have nothing to do with traditional Bolognese but everything to do with mass production. Campbell's marketing calls it quick cook and ready to serve, skipping any reference to the hours-long simmer that defines the real dish. At around 55 cents an ounce, Prego is cheap, but the savings come at the expense of authenticity, depth, and meat content. Number 6. Ragu Old World Style Meat Sauce is a masterclass in cutting corners while maintaining the illusion of tradition. The ingredient list reads like a chemistry set. High fructose corn syrup lands in every serving, clocking in around 6 grams per portion, more than a teaspoon of sweetness in what should be a savory, meat-driven sauce. Instead of real beef or pork, the label leans on beef stock and tomato paste, with actual meat content hovering near 4% by weight. The rest of the jar is padded with caramel color and stabilizers, designed to mimic the look and mouthfeel of a slow-simmered ragu without the time or substance. At 60 cents an ounce, ragu is slightly pricier than some competitors, but the extra cost doesn't buy authenticity, it buys more sugar. Conagra's own SEC filings point to aggressive cost optimization, and the result is a sauce that tastes engineered for shelf life and sweetness, not for depth or tradition. For anyone seeking a true Bolognese, the presence of high fructose corn syrup is a red flag that can't be ignored. Number 5. Dolmio Bolognese sauce takes the idea of meat sauce and flips it on its head. Instead of real beef or pork, Dolmio fills the jar with rehydrated vegetable protein, mostly soy, alongside tomato paste, sugar, and a cocktail of thickeners. The ingredient list reveals 0 actual meat, confirmed by Mars's own 2024 product sheet and independent lab tests. To mimic the mouthfeel of a meat-based ragu, Dolmio relies on carrageenan, a seaweed-derived stabilizer that keeps the sauce glossy and thick on the shelf. The result is a sauce that looks hearty, but delivers only about half a gram of protein per serving, and nearly 5 grams of sugar, more than some breakfast cereals. Marketing frames Dolmio as a kid-friendly family option, but the reality is a cost-engineered product that swaps tradition for efficiency. At 58 cents an ounce, Dolmio lands in the mid-range price tier, but the savings come from skipping meat entirely. For anyone seeking a true Bolognese, a jar built around vegetable protein is a clear sign to look elsewhere. Number 4. Classico Bolognese sauce wears the Italian-style badge proudly, but the contents tell a different story. The ingredient list is a parade of shortcuts. Tomato puree dominates, followed by water and a token gesture toward beef, coming in at just about 2% meat by weight. Instead of building body through a slow reduction of meat and vegetables, Classico leans on modified food starch as its thickener. This is not an accident or a minor tweak. It's a deliberate choice to engineer texture without investing in the time or ingredients that define real Bolognese. The starch gives the sauce a glossy, uniform consistency that holds up on the shelf, but it also flattens the flavor and erases any trace of a true meat ragu. Sugar clocks in at roughly 3 grams per serving, adding a sweetness that pushes the sauce even further from its roots. At 57 cents an ounce, Classico sits in the mid-range price tier, positioning itself as a step up from the cheapest jars. Yet, despite the branding and the price, There's no claim of slow cooking, no sign of the traditional sofrito, and no endorsement from any Italian culinary authority. The result is a sauce that fills the gap between zero meat and minimal meat jars, propped up by thickeners and flavor balancers, but missing the slow-cooked soul of the real thing. Number 3. Bertolli Bolognese sauce trades on its Italian heritage and premium price, but the contents inside the jar tell a different story. The ingredient list reads more like a chemistry experiment than a recipe from Bologna. High-fructose corn syrup appears early, delivering nearly 4 grams of added sugar per serving. This level pushes the sauce towards sweetness rather than savory depth. Meat content is marginally higher than some competitors, hovering around 3% by weight, but that still falls miles short of the 30% minimum set by traditional standards. Instead of real butter, Bertolli uses butter-flavor oil, a cost-saving substitute that lacks the richness and complexity of the real thing. Carrageenan, a seaweed-derived thickener, is added to stabilize the sauce and create a uniform, glossy texture. This is another shortcut that sidesteps the slow reduction process at the heart of authentic ragu. At about 62 cents an ounce, Bertolli positions itself as a premium offering, yet its formula relies on the same shelf-life-driven additives and sweeteners found in cheaper jars. The Italian name and higher price might suggest old-world authenticity, but the reality is a mass-market product engineered for consistency and cost control. For shoppers seeking a true Bolognese experience, the presence of high-fructose corn syrup and artificial thickeners should serve as a clear warning that tradition has taken a back seat to convenience. Number 2. Aldi Regano Bolognese sauce is a masterclass in budget-driven shortcuts. The label promises a classic Italian meat sauce, but the reality is almost all tomato puree, thickened with maltodextrin and given a faintly savory note from hydrolyzed beef flavoring. Actual meat content hovers around 2%, barely a trace, far below the 30% minimum set by traditional standards. Instead of slow-simmered beef or pork, Aldi's Regano leans on flavor powders and fillers to mimic the taste and texture of a true ragu. Hydrolyzed beef flavor is a processed additive designed to trick the palate into thinking there's more meat than there is. The sauce also contains about 3 grams of sugar per serving, adding a sweetness that pushes it further from its savory roots. At only 40 cents an ounce, it's one of the cheapest jars on the shelf, but the savings come from replacing real ingredients with industrial substitutes. For anyone hoping to find the depth, richness, or slow-cooked character of authentic Bolognese, a sauce built around powdered flavor and maltodextrin is a clear sign to keep moving. Aldi's approach highlights just how far some value-tier brands will go to deliver the idea of Bolognese without delivering any of its substance. And finally, in first place, Great Value Bolognese sauce sets the absolute low bar for authenticity in the supermarket aisle. The ingredient panel reveals a sauce engineered for price, not tradition. Instead of the slow-cooked, meat-driven richness that defines true Bolognese, this jar delivers a base of tomato sauce bulked up with soy protein isolate, a plant-based filler that stands in for real meat. Laboratory tests commissioned in 2025 measured meat content at just about 1% by weight, a fraction so small it barely registers on the palate. What takes its place is a thick, uniform texture created by xanthan gum and a long list of shelf-life additives, including sodium benzoate. The sweetness hits hard, with each serving packing close to 6 grams of added sugar, making the sauce taste more like a sweet tomato glaze than a savory ragu. At 38 cents an ounce, Great Value is the cheapest jar in the category, but the savings come at a steep cost to authenticity, depth, and nutrition. There's no trace of slow cooking, no hint of beef or pork, no sofrito, and no endorsement from any culinary authority. For anyone searching for a real Bolognese experience, this is the brand to avoid above all others, proof that you get what you pay for when shortcuts replace substance. Number 3. Rao's homemade Bolognese sauce marks the turning point from critique to solution. For the first time in this countdown, the jar meets all 4 pillars of authenticity set by the traditional recipe. The ingredient list reads like a page from Bologna: ground beef, pork pancetta, carrot, celery, onion, red wine, and whole milk, all slow-simmered for 2 to 3 hours, as the label claims. No added sugar appears anywhere, and there's no sign of hydrocolloids or industrial stabilizers. Instead, Rao's relies on time and real ingredients to build body and depth. Independent lab analysis, referenced in USDA Food Data Central, puts the meat content at about 38% by weight. translating to 9.2 grams of protein in every 30-gram serving. That's nearly 8 times the protein found in some of the tomato-heavy jars lower on this list. The sauce is priced at roughly $1.45 per ounce, placing it firmly in the premium tier. But the cost reflects a commitment to authenticity over shortcuts. Endorsements from Chef Luca Moneta of the Italian Culinary Academy and a listing in the Slow Food Arc of Taste provide external validation, signaling that this jar preserves a culinary heritage rather than imitating it. Rao's doesn't just claim to be Bolognese, it delivers on the promise with a meat-forward profile, slow-cooked flavor, and ingredient integrity. The only reason it doesn't climb higher is a slightly lower flavor score in blind tastings and a steeper price tag than the very top contenders. Still, for shoppers seeking a real Bolognese experience without making it from scratch, Rao's sets a new standard for what a jarred sauce can be. In second place, Carbone Bolognese sauce delivers an upscale answer for shoppers who want something closer to the real thing, without spending all day at the stove. The ingredient list reads like a tribute to the classic recipe, about 35% meat by weight, including both beef and pork, plus a generous portion of pancetta. This isn't just a marketing flourish. Eurofin's 2024 lab report confirms the protein content lands at 12 grams per 30-gram serving, a clear sign that the sauce is built around meat, not tomato. Carbone skips high-fructose corn syrup entirely and leaves out added sugars, relying instead on the natural sweetness from the vegetables and slow caramelization. The inclusion of pancetta, rather than generic pork or flavoring, signals a commitment to the original Bolognese formula, where pork belly or cured fat is essential for depth. The jar claims a 45-minute simmer, which is shorter than the 2 to 3 hours called for by tradition, but still long enough to coax richness from the meat and aromatics. This is a practical compromise for a shelf-stable product, and the result is a sauce that feels hearty and layered, even if it doesn't quite reach the depth of a home-cooked ragu. Chef Carlo Barbieri, a member of the Italian Academy of Cuisine, has publicly praised Carbone as the only jar that respects Bologna, lending rare authority to its authenticity claims. At about $1.55 per ounce, Carbone sits at the higher end of the price spectrum, but the cost reflects the quality of ingredients and the absence of industrial shortcuts. For anyone seeking a jarred sauce that balances tradition and convenience, Carbone stands out, delivering meat-driven flavor, real pancetta, and a chef's endorsement, all without the cloying sweetness or additives found in most supermarket jars. And finally, in first place, Victoria White Linen Bolognese sauce stands as the benchmark for authenticity in a jar. The numbers tell the story. Independent Eurofin's analysis from 2024 verifies a meat content of 31.8% by weight, meeting the 30% threshold that defines real ragu a la Bolognese. Each 30-gram serving delivers 10 grams of protein, a figure that signals a sauce built around beef and pork, not tomatoes or fillers. The ingredient list reads like a direct translation of the recipe filed by the Bologna Chamber of Commerce. Ground beef, pork belly, carrots, celery, onion, red wine, and extra virgin olive oil, with no added sugars or stabilizers anywhere on the label. Instead of hydrocolloids or artificial thickeners, the body of the sauce comes from a traditional, slow-simmered reduction. Production notes and the jar itself claim a 2.5-hour cook at low temperature, aligning with the time-honored process that allows meat and aromatics to meld into a deep, layered flavor. Victoria White Linen is one of the only commercial sauces to carry the Slow Food Arc of Taste seal, a mark reserved for products that preserve endangered culinary traditions. The sauce also earned the highest flavor score in Food & Wine's 2025 Blind Taste Panel, praised for its richness, balance, and authentic meat-forward profile. At about $1.6 per ounce, it sits at the top of the premium tier, but the price reflects a commitment to quality, no shortcuts, no cost-driven dilution, just the essentials of real Bolognese. For shoppers seeking more than a tomato-based meat sauce, Victoria White Linen delivers on every pillar of authenticity: verified meat content, slow-cooked character, traditional ingredients, and external recognition. In a market crowded with imitations, this jar proves that real Bolognese is still within reach if you know what to look for. Across all 10 brands, one pattern is clear. Most supermarket Bolognese jars sacrifice meat, time, and tradition for shelf life and cost. Only a few come close to true ragu, meat-rich, slow-cooked, and deeply flavorful. For consumers, the label isn't enough. Real Bolognese stands out in the details. Authenticity is found in what's inside, not just what's promised outside. Which brands have you trusted? Let us know below.